Welcome back to LIMS or BRIMS documentation. This time we're going to be taking a look at specifically the boxes and this is kind of the end product. We want aliquot, usually aliquot that's stored inside a box and something that looks like this. Here these actually are not set up. They're mostly set up. I don't have the mutation to actually dump it inside the box, partially because I'm not super happy with the code of this. Before I dive in, and this is the end goal, is having some sort of information showing this is where this is inside a box, inside a location, and this is really what something approximate to what we want it to look like, although I think usually we have 9x9 boxes. So here I'm actually really happy with this view, but the code underlying I am not very happy with for a number of reasons which I'll get into. Before I dive into this, let me talk about the back end really fast. So, and we're in the bottom right hand corner. I'll talk about the rest of the sections and why they're bad in a minute, which part of what happened with this is I was learning as I was going, as we all are as programmers, find ourselves doing, and I realized there's better ways to do this. So I'm sure at some point I'll refactor it, but in the meantime, gotta complete the rest of the project. So first of all, we have a box type. So not all boxes are the same, and that's what this view is there for. And I'm actually pretty proud that it does this nice auto expanding sort of stuff. Typical boxes are 9x9. Some of them will just be flat numbered, but some of them will have letters as well. And sometimes what you'll see with some boxes is the letters go in an inverted pattern like this. So this is like A1, although sometimes it's up here and along here, but this having it along these axes covers both directions and functionally works for both directions. And I just like it there. So I like that this is nice and reactive and does the inversion and things like that, but the code behind it is not the best in my opinion. I still haven't added this button anywhere in the code, but that's what that we just saw is encapsulated by the box type model. And you can see you've got an idea of whether it's numeric or alphabetic, whether they're inverted or not, and how long the lengths are on either side. There's the inverted portion. And then you have, once you have that, you have a concept of an actual box. And inside a box, you have the name of it, you have a description. So it might be the blood box where we store all the blood, something along those lines. We have the box type, which is the foreign key to the box model, and then where it's stored. Then, of course, we got to talk about the aliquot or specimen. That's specifically, I think it's always aliquot that's going to be in those boxes, though. You can make adjustments if you run into a use case where that's not the instance, but you have the box slot, which is a slot inside a box. So you have a box foreign key, or box model foreign key, the instance of the box. You have your row position, your column position, and then what is in there, which is a one-to-one field with the aliquot model. So you can only have, if you have an aliquot, you're only going to have an aliquot in one location. It's not ethereal. It can't be in all places at once. And that is kind of the makeup of a box, or I should say here, a box. So this is a slot, this is a box, and the meta information associated with that box is the box type model. The way, and again, this is newbie mistakes, or I should say just not newbie, I did it in a way that is suboptimal and I would want to do it differently now, essentially. What I ended up doing is sending a JSON out. So you can see I'm doing data munging, which is okay, but really rather than doing data munging and then plopping everything into a JSON, I should have probably just created a graphene object type that had all the information in a nice, easy to munge way, and then filled that with this data munging resolution here in the schema. And instead what's happening is I'm just filling in all the positions and sending the rest of the data through, and it ends up looking pretty ugly. Let's see if I've got the GraphQL call. It looks like this. So data comes in, here's all slots, and then you've got this kind of nasty looking JSON being spit out. The code from there, the code from there I don't think looks super, so the box setup code's not the best. It's mostly positional logic, and that is, I'm kind of hopping logical frames here, so bear with me. That's this code right here inside box setup. So here you got props for being inverted, you got props for whether it's numeric or not. This is all data that's in cell counts. What that's doing is that's just counting how many empty cells we're going to be pushing for that view. So this here, so if I make the length, or I set the length to 4, we're adding 4 cell counts, and that's all that's happening with that push of an empty table cell, and the rest is just header cells that are displaying the header, and we're returning that box altogether. I feel like there's a better way to write that code, probably using mapping or something that's not just pure positional logic, but for the moment it's functional. It's not super pretty, but it is functional. Then we have the box view code. You can see I actually just left the query in here for the all slots rather than doing an import from someplace else, probably because I'm like, I'm probably going to change this in the future. But once we have it here, what we do is we pull in, we've got the return box that we're eventually going to send back to the view. This is the build box function, so we send the data to the build box and then spit it out in the view. We've got the cell count, which is going to get filled in, the length header, which is going to get filled in, alphabet in case it's alphabetic rather than numeric. If it is, that's the header we push in. If it's inverted, we invert it. And then it's just kind of ugly. I mean, look at this here. Blah, makes me feel bad that I wrote that code, which I'm sure everybody has those instances. But anyway, so as long as it's defined, we are pushing all of that data into the tables and the cells, and then going ahead and saying, okay, in the modal, and this is just the modal for that drop down in case we wanted to, not here. This is the modal that's being called there, which isn't completely filled out with the mutation that's ready. But the rest of it's doing this build function where it's adding the header and whatnot through this ugliness right there, which is a bunch of positional stuff. And yeah, I feel like there's got to be a better way to do that. But for the moment, it works. If you feel like taking a deep challenge and you're like, oh, I can make this code better and I'm a superior programmer, I invite you to edit this code. If you're just kind of dipping your toes in, this isn't the code I would start with to try to help out. Unless you wanted to add the mutation to the box entry modal, that portion shouldn't be too difficult. You just need a refetch query on the queries that are called overhead, which is all slots, because there's going to be a new slot that's filled in. And here we're composing the entire thing all together anyway. Anyway, I'm not sure if we need to add a new, so we have content data that's coming in, box type data that's coming in. That's why we're wrapping. So it's 2 different queries, one for the box type to construct the initial box and its shape, and the content to fill in data into that shape is what's happening down below. I think we can actually wrap the mutation data directly into the modal component below, which is what I mean is the child modal here, which would be here, box entry modal. And that would be fairly simplistic to do. Anyway, the way it all renders out is name. We're just calling the name, description, and then we're building the box with that ugly code I showed you up above. And that is a box. Again, I'm happy with the way it looks, but especially this box setup thing. I like that it kind of does its neat like little expandy thing, and that we can reactively invert and whatnot. One caveat, by the way, is if you have more than 26, some boxes I've heard of out in the world, they have more than 26 slots and they're alphabetically marked, and so they go A, B, so on and so forth. I do not have that currently enabled, mostly because I think those are a rare box type. But if you're under that box type, good luck to you writing logic for that. I don't think it'd be ultra complicated, but would require a modicum of thought. At the moment, I'm leaving it out just because it's not a use case I'm running into, which of course is a good excuse for anything. Anyway, yeah, that's this. Again, not super happy. If I was going to rewrite it, first of all, want to change the back-end call that's coming out, so I'm not just shooting out kind of an ugly JSON. And then, of course, a lot of the positional logic probably could be written in a much cleaner way. But for the moment, it's functional. Next, we're going to talk about the most complicated portion, which is the storage portion.